Alright, I thought I'd just give you a rundown of basically what happened with my first day on jury duty. As some people might not be sure what exactly you're doing, you might not be sure what to take or what's needed. I'm just going to say what happened for me. Maybe it helps some people, maybe it doesn't. Basically, you take your jury summons, you will be obviously given a letter, you will fill in the forms required, and you'll be given a jury summons. I had to take in page 1 and 2 each day to basically be allowed into court and allowed into the jury rooms. So make sure you keep the little booklet they give with you, and just the first couple of pages. What I will say to start off with is the form that they give you for deferring and actually trying to get excused altogether, it's very serious. But when I was in jury duty, I'm not saying it wasn't serious, because it is a very serious thing, but it seemed a lot more, it was a little less formal, and there was a lot more people being excused. I was one of them. I'll explain why. There was zero chance of me getting out of jury duty. I actually kind of wanted to do it, but I'll explain why I got excused in a second. Effectively, the only way you can get out of jury duty is if it's a massive inconvenience, and you have to give a pretty good explanation as to why it's a big inconvenience. Your employee won't let you go, or your employer won't let you go, and that's kind of tough, because you end up having to write a letter to court, and they have to talk to your employee, and because it's a legal thing, so them stopping you going, they need a good reason. If there's been like a family death, or you've got a holiday already booked, and that pretty much only defers you, and when you defer, you give them a time slot that you then can't get out of, and then you are up for being picked again, and you will be called again. So when I got mine, I really had no excuse to get out of jury duty, so I said, you know what, instead of deferring and then waiting a few months, I'd rather just get it over with. So I went to jury duty, and I wasn't sure what I'd taken. So on day one, I took a book. And this is what I took, okay? I dressed just regular. I didn't wear a football shirt. I just dressed regularly. Everybody was dressed just completely normal, like you'd see anybody in the streets. There was no fancy, there was no smart dress. There was nothing. People in short sleeve t-shirts, people in t-shirts with no sleeves, girls in, just a summer dress or a jacket or just jeans, just literally whatever you wanted to wear. It was fine. Just obviously appropriate, nothing crazy. You are, still in a court, but, basically whatever you want within, just use your brain. And then I went, and I really wasn't sure what I'd need, so I took a backpack, I took a book, I took a tablet with some Netflix shows downloaded onto, because you can now download from Netflix. So I downloaded like a TV series onto my tablet, and I took a jacket, because I wasn't sure like if it would rain and I'd be allowed to leave the court and walk around town if I had time to kill. So I took a jacket, a book, a tablet, my jury summons, and that was it really. But that was absolutely fine. When you go into the court, for me, when I went into the court, you go into the court and it's full security. It's probably like the safest place you can be. I went in, there's two blokes stood there either side. You go in, I put my bag through like a scanner machine. They scanned the inside of my bag, it was fine. I emptied my pockets, my wallet, phone, keys, loose change. They then looked through my wallet, they emptied my wallet, they looked around my phone, obviously not on it, but just check my phone, check keys. And then you go through, a scanner, you put your arms up and you get a full body scan, and then you're allowed into the court. So there was one thing, a couple of girls behind me, it didn't say on the jury summons, but they took in bottled perfume. Their bottled perfume was taken away from them. Now, I'm 99% sure they picked that up at the end of the day, but that's another annoying inconvenience that you might forget that you'd left it there, or they might, misplace it or something. So I'd avoid taking in any bottled drinks or perfume, just because, it can get a bit, It is security, and they don't really like that, and everything is on offer in the court. Once I've gone in, I basically asked the bloke that metal, he sweeped me. I said, where do I go for jury duty? There was a judge there with a black cloak. She waited and she pointed, she said, this way to this lift for the jury duty. And to get into the lift, I just showed her my jury summons with my number, and I said, yeah, I'm a jury member. And then she lets you go up into the lift. This was obviously my court, but I imagine it's very similar everywhere. So you go upstairs, you go in the lift, and there's basically, for me, there was a row of chairs to the right and a new block in front of a telly. After everyone had pretty much arrived, it was like 9:15. Everybody sat down, and the bloke began to speak. He gave us a register, like you're at school again. You heard your name, you said yes, and obviously it's quite official, so you have to be there. You have to shout loudly so people know you're there. And after everybody was accounted for, he pretty much gave you out these forms. He gave you out a income form. He gave you out a sort of like another contact form and an emergency contact form. So you fill out like details for an emergency contact, which you then tear off and give back to the bloke. You fill out basically the same form you filled out earlier, your jury number, occupation. You don't even have to put your occupation in if you don't want. You just have to put your name, jury number, sign it, and a couple of other things. And he goes through the sheet afterwards anyway, so if you're unsure, just wait for him to go through it. And then he puts in like a travel form. Your travel form you can tick car, bike, bus, train. Again, you sign, you date it, and you fill it out for the week. If you're not sure, there was questions like round trip mileage and average time. If you've travelled with somebody in a car, or you weren't really sure how far you travelled in a car or whatever, you can just get the form back off him the next day. It's really not like a big deal. So they're more than comfortable with just saying, yeah, okay, you weren't sure, then give us the information, tomorrow. After you filled in the forms, he basically called us up in packs of 3. He did a register for the week 2 jurors to check the week 2 jurors were there. They arrived at 10 o'clock. And then we watched a film all about jury duty, what your role is, and everything. Just sat down and watched that. After that was done, he pretty much called you to the front. He asked you for ID to prove who you were. He said you only need ID basically on the first day, but it's always good to have it. He said he prefers passport, just because he likes to look at people's passport pictures. He said, but driving license is fine and stuff. So I just gave him a driving license. So you go up, you say to him if you've got any problems with the form. So for example, I was traveling in a car, and I was also probably in the second week going to travel by train. And you were only ticking one box on the form. So he was like, all right, we'll get you an extra form for the train if you want to fill that out. And I explained my situation, whatever. You can talk in private to me, explain your situation and any questions you're unsure of about jury duty. So for example, if you're not sure you can do a long, more than 2 week trial, I told the bloke that. I said I can't do more than 2 weeks. And he said that's fine. He said just if you get picked for a trial, then you just tell that judge or that person that you can't do longer than 2 weeks. However, he went on to explain, and this is what I'll get into, he went on to explain that it used to be an old system. It's a London office with about 8 or 9 people that work there, and it used to be a system where people that picked for jury duty were not hand-picked, but, they would do things like they would group people. He said they would pick people, like, just for fun, like back in the day. Like, everyone would have, like, a bird name, like Mrs. Thrush, Mr. Starling, things like this, or they would pick a room with 7 Mr. Thompsons in it, but they said they can't do anything like that. They can't have any fun anymore. So it's an automated system that just spews out names. Now, because we were a rural court, it said it could call them from anywhere. So there was people coming from Liverpool to the court, which was about 42 miles. So they were travelling 42 miles there and back each day by car or train. And because it's an automated system and because the form you initially fill out doesn't give you any reason to get out of it, then you basically have to roll up on the first day. It's very tough to get out of, but you can basically probably get out of it. I didn't want to get out of it, but he gave me the option. So the form initially, as you know, basically says, can you travel to court on this 2 weeks? And if you cannot, then you have to have a really good reason why. But if you can, basically, it doesn't matter if it's annoying. If you're travelling from Liverpool and you're travelling 40 miles to court, it doesn't matter that it's annoying or that it's slightly difficult. It is a legal thing and you have to travel. But when you get there, it's a little bit more lax. So you travel on your first day and then you can explain to the bloke, actually, it is really difficult travelling here and back. It's an awkward situation. You might have a child in Liverpool and then you're travelling 40 miles and you've got a childminder. Or you might just be like me, where it was just really difficult to travel there, but there was no option for that on the form. Now, what it does was the week, the second week jurors came in at 10:15 and they were on a murder trial. And I think that the automated system sent 150 people because they knew that week would be busy. There was a lot of court cases and there was a murder case. And then the next week that I was picked, there was another 150. And there was like 8 courts. Even if there was a trial each day for 8 courts, that's like 12 people, 2 backup. That's 14 people with 8 courts. That would be 90. That would be 112 people needed maximum, and there was 150. So he was basically saying that what happens is, once you've arrived at jury duty, you have a chance to be on a jury. Obviously, you are again spit out into a computer, and the computer then picks your chance to be a juror. You might get a trial on day 1, and it might be a 4-day trial of a small bar fight or something. Then you will go off. The judge will explain everything. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is they baby you. You can't do anything wrong. You can. I'll explain that. Just a funny story. And you can't mess anything up because their job is, you are doing them a favour. You are the jury. Without them, they cannot do their job. They need a jury. So basically, whatever question you think is too stupid, it really isn't. For example, there was, and he was telling me that somebody found, I think it was like an animal cruelty case or something, and he said one person found the evidence really distressing, and they were allowed to leave the jury. So there are ways that you can leave juries. You could, if you think it's a silly question, if you're sat there and you're feeling really sick and emotional about some detail about a trial, don't feel stupid. You can pass a note to I think it's the clerk who wears a black cloak, and you can say, listen, I can't judge this case properly because I'm emotional, or I'm just not feeling great. There's all these things that can happen. That's when the backup jury comes in, and then you might have a chance to be picked. So once you're in and once you've got inducted and everything's going on, it's absolutely fine. They basically baby you and tell you everything that you need to do, where you need to be, what time. They follow you, they walk you around. And honestly, it's fine. The only thing is, there's a hell of a lot of waiting, because what can happen is, it's not everybody gets a trial. I might be picked for a 4-day trial. I finish my 4-day trial, the computer comes out, I get picked again. I do a 1-day trial. I finish my 1-day trial, I get picked again. I could end up doing 8 trials in 2 weeks. And then there could be somebody, because there's so many extra people, that they don't ever get anything, and they spend the whole time waiting around. And you can't really leave the court in case you're called as a backup juror or something comes up. You're very rarely actually allowed to leave the court, in my experience. So I had the Netflix, I had the iPod for music. They do a range of DVDs, but I didn't prefer that. I just prefer to download a Netflix show, watch that on my tablet, and they give you £5.50 each day to spend at the shop or the cafeteria. The woman even came up and she gave a full speech about every type of food they sell and how they prefer you to use the in-court facilities. maybe they get a cut or something, but they wanted you to use the facilities. And basically, yeah, you could go get a morning coffee, a bacon sandwich, and then you always get a full hour for lunch. What you'll begin to realise is when you're on jury duty is it's not lax, or it's obviously very serious because it is the law, but they're not pushing themselves. You always get your full hour for lunch, and because everything has to be done by the letter of the law, there is downtime, there is waiting, so people get full hour for lunch. There's no rush for the jury. Don't worry about that. And honestly, it was just fine. So basically, the bloke began to explain how there was a lot of people here. I think there was more people than needed. A lot more people than needed. For some reason, there was loads of jurors. I don't imagine in a court there'd be 150 people again like that on a quiet week. But that was just my luck. And I went up there. I said, listen... I didn't even say anything. I just said, do I need a second travel form? I said, because if it's difficult, I might not... The second week, I might not be able to get by car. So then I'll go by train. I said, do I need to give you like a train ticket to prove that I've been on a train so you can pay me back into my bank? And then he basically just went, do you want to be excused? And I said, what do you mean? And he was like, well, if travel's slightly difficult for you, you can be excused. And I did weigh up the option. I did think about... I probably should go and do a trial. It would be interesting to do one. I'm highly argumentative or strong-minded. I think I'd really love to get a detailed case and try and argue my point. But this is what my day would have been like. It would have been arrive at 8 o'clock to the court, wait around in town till 10:30, which is when court started on the second day for each day. And then it would probably finish at 3-4, and then I'd be lingering around town for another hour and a bit, and then I'd go home. So that would be 3 or 4 hours just waiting around. And then inside court for 2 weeks, I might not have even got a trial. So that would have been 5 or 6 hours of waiting. So I could have been waiting, easily 8-9 hours a day, just sat there. And I decided that, there were probably... I was only like the first 12 people to be called. One person got dismissed because they knew the lead prosecutor and some other people in court, which you'd think that if you knew that, because you know what court you're going to, you know what people are going to be there, you'd imagine you'd be able to get out of jury duty. But as I explained, the form's very difficult to get out of, and I think that's intentional, that basically they force you to appear and then you can explain yourself. So don't worry, if it is really bloody awkward for you, but you can't get out of it, there is a large chance that there are way too many jurors, and the bloke will just be like, yeah, you can go. So yeah, it's kind of disappointing that I didn't get to do a trial. To be honest, the things they were more bothered about, was like liquids in your bags. They were very bothered about sharing information of trials on social media. Obviously, back in the day, that wasn't a thing, but 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing, whereas now, there was a story of a girl on jury duty that fancied the defendant, and she Facebook friend requested him, which then basically tied her into the trial because she then technically knew the defendant, and then she was thrown off the jury, and I think she actually got in trouble. Don't do anything stupid like that. Don't share the details on Facebook or anything. You can probably talk about after the trial's finished. You can probably get away with saying to your parents or whatever, or really close people, don't say anything, but this is the type of trial I was on. Just don't mention anything that the jurors said, really. That was the main thing. Don't mention anything like this was a murder trial and it was an 8-2 jury and this bloke was not giving in. Don't say it. Just use your brain, really. And that's what they were bothered about, really. Social media, sharing stuff, taking pictures of in court, video in court. You can live stream in court. Don't do any of that. It was more about that, and people were, there was a girl in front of me that was younger than me. She got excused. I don't know for what reason, but there'd only been 12 people gone up to hand in ID, and 3 of us had already been excused. And I figured I probably could say to him, I'm alright, don't excuse me. And then I'd have sat back down, and when the whole other 150 people had gone up, if I'd have come back to him and changed my mind and said, actually, I don't fancy waiting around in a building for 2 weeks. Can I be excused? He might have said, actually, I've just excused a lot of other people. Now we've got the right amount of people. You can't be excused. So I just figured, you know what, I'd get out of there whilst I can. It would have been an interesting experience for sure, but it is a lot of waiting. I'd have been absolutely fine having an awkward day waiting around and travelling if I'd have known I would have got a case. Chances are I probably most definitely would have got a case, but there is that chance that you end up sat there for 2 weeks and you never get a case, just the way the automatic system works. But all I'd say is there's literally nothing to worry about. My jury experience was a bit of a waste. The forms, for example, the kind of thing, the way it's run, there was a form that had a yes/no box that said, do you want to have a free £5 lunch? Well, why would... Oh, no, it said, do you want to have a free £5 subsistence deposited into your account? Even if you didn't spend the £5 fully in the shop, it went into your bank. So why would you say no? It's just another example of like forms and it all been kind of outdated and a machine pumping everything out and nobody really looking at individual situations. Like, why would a girl from Liverpool be sent 40 miles to this court when she could have been sent to a closer court? But they can't do any of that because it's just an automated system and it says you are going here on that date, and if you can travel, you have to go legally. But basically, when you get there, there's a bit more leeway to chat to the people, and they're all really friendly and nice. And obviously, there's nothing to be nervous about. I was nervous, but having done it, it's literally you just roll up, you get security checked, and from then on, they completely baby you in every way. They tell you where to go, where to walk, how to walk 3 steps down to the canteen, what food you can eat, what food's available, should I say. And there's nothing that they don't take care of. For example, the court changed. For example, somebody's trial was court 7. The judge came up and she said court 7 is now court 9. Somebody said, where's that? And they went, don't worry, we'll walk you there. And if for some reason, you can't handle the 60 steps down to court 2, you can actually come off the trial because there's no lift to court 2. And there's just a whole load of little things that they just completely baby you. There's nothing to be nervous about or worried. And it is an interesting experience. I only did it for like 2 days, but that was that. So if you've got really awkward travel situation or your situation is just very, very difficult, but you've been forced to go no matter what, chances are you might be able to be excused. I didn't want to be excused. I didn't ask the guy to excuse me. I just said I might get the train the second week, and I think he took that as an opportunity to say, we've got too many people. This guy's maybe in a slightly awkward situation. Should we let him go? Because I think they're trying to do us a favour by not having a lot of waiting around. I think what the system does is it chucks 150 people or however many people to your court. The court then thinks, there's probably way too many people here. Let's analyse some people's situations. Let's listen to some people and let some people go to make it better. Or they might get there and it might be a lot more formal. It might be a very, very busy week or 2 weeks in court. And they might just say, listen, we know your travel's a bit awkward, but we actually need you on the jury. And you might be there for the full 2 weeks. So that was my experience. I guess it just depends. It's all entirely dependent on your situation. For me, too many people, not enough cases, I got let go. That's what it felt like, because I didn't really have a difficult situation. He just offered me the chance to go, so I just thought I'll leave then. It beats waiting around for 2 weeks. And yeah, a trial, my dad's done jury duty before. You just get taken to the court, and again, everything is explained. Absolutely everything is explained for you. You don't need to worry about anything. They tell you when to stand, when to speak. They give you sheets, when to read the oath. And you can even say, I want to swear in a different faith book. You can leave if you feel like you're emotionally invested in the trial and you don't like the evidence. It's making you feel ill. There's all that. It's literally baby stepping you. They're walking you through everything that you have to do because it's the law. They obviously don't want to get anything wrong. They don't want you to do something wrong that could mess up a trial. So literally only keynote, make you turn your phone off on silent. Make sure it's not ringing, no alarms or anything, because you don't want it going off in court. And that's pretty much it. I thought it was all right. That was my experience. It would have been nice to do a trial, but honestly, it's just a lot of waiting. Definitely get a tablet, download some Netflix. The only thing I would say actually is when I was there was 40 lockers, and there was 150 jurors for week 1 and about 120 for week 2, the jurors that had already been there. So there was obviously not enough lockers for people. So carrying a bag around with my tablet in, I did have to leave my bag kind of in the room sometimes. Some of you may not be comfortable with, but honestly, like, everybody's been security checked. It is a court. No one's going to steal your bag in a frigging court, because that would be the most dumb thing going. But if you want to pay £1, you can use a locker and that stuff. And, you know, I took a bag. I felt like a fool going in with a bag. I thought everyone's not going to have anything. People are just going to have a newspaper or something. But there were people there with tablets like me. So, yeah. There we go. That was my jury experience. We are no longer doing jury duty. I just thought I'd surmise basically how the leading up to the jury duty went and how I feel about it. I think it's a pretty rubbish system that forces people to travel up there to, like, then get excused or explain themselves further, but that's the way it is. I feel like if they made the form represent what it's actually like when you get to jury duty, probably everybody would manage to get out of it and they wouldn't have everyone. They wouldn't have anyone. So I understand why they make the form really difficult, but don't worry, when you get there, everything's easy. They walk you through everything. That was my experience with jury duty in the UK.